Making an ESL lesson all about war and peace sounds crazy. Stay with me, I'll show you how to do it. I will never forget opening my textbook and seeing chapter 1, War and Peace, and thinking, how on earth am I, one, going to make an ESL lesson about war and peace, two, make it interesting, engaging, and avoid like sensitive topics? I was stressed and I walked into class expecting it to be a disaster. Cut to a few years later, and this is one of my students' favorite lessons. My name is Megan. I've been an ESL teacher in China for the past 10 years. I'm also getting my PhD in education. Let me show you how you can do a topic on war and peace. Something I really try to do with my ESL students is not just talk in English and communicate in English, it's also to build some practical skills such as creative thinking. So for the warm-up, I want them to practice their creative thinking. As a warm-up, I have students work with a partner and discuss the pros and cons of war. Now, let me preface this by saying that war is horrific. War is horrible. Loss of life is something that should absolutely be avoided. And I tell the students that. The first question I ask them is war a good thing? And when they all say no, I tell them that war is not considered a good thing. However, we are going to practice our critical thinking because for everything that happens, there may be some positive effects as well as some negative effects. And we are going to really challenge ourselves today to try to find some positive and negative effects of war. So I have students work with a partner and I challenge them, I push them to write down 5 positive results and 5 negative results of war. Usually, students will start with the negative, of course, because it's very easy to think of those negative effects, loss of life, harm to the environment, pollution. And they're always really hesitant about finding the positive results, but once they get going, then they get going. They really can be so creative. And I also love doing this exercise kind of near the beginning of the school year to just give them a little bit of encouragement that they can be creative, because they will come up with things like technological advancements or medicinal advancements. They'll come up with things like it unifies the country and it can be an opportunity to protect your country and defend your country from outside invaders. Definitely give students a little bit of extra time because they might need it to think of these ideas and communicate these difficult, deep concepts with their partner. Now, once we've warmed up, we've jumped into the topic, I move into the vocabulary that we will need to know for this lesson. Now, the vocabulary that you choose is going to depend on the student's level. It's going to depend on your textbook and your materials, as well as what other things you'll have them do further on in the lesson. So I will choose the vocabulary for some of the things that we'll do in the book, but then also some of the speaking exercises that we have a little bit later. After we learn some vocabulary words, I move into the exercises. This is the part that you can adapt for yourself. If you have a textbook, then you can do the writing, the reading, the listening, the questions, whatever you have for your materials. After we finish our vocabulary and the exercises, it's time to go back to speaking. And one reason I love this lesson is because it really builds on top of each other. For the rest of the lesson, we're all working on different levels of the same activity. I tell the students that unfortunately, we are on the brink of a new war in our classroom. I give them a completely hypothetical situation. Feel free to take this one or just change out the countries. Honestly, I just chose these countries completely at random, so feel free to change it or adapt it if you need to for sensitive issues. So I tell the students that last night, France invaded the UK. And a war has broken out between the two countries. The UK is allied with both America and Russia. France is allied with Canada and Japan. So when the UK is invaded, it calls on its allies for help. It calls on America and Russia for help. And of course, When France finds itself in a war, it calls on its allies, Canada and Japan, for help. Then you divide the classroom into 6 different parts. You can add countries to this, you can subtract countries to this, whatever best fits your classroom. And so I divide the classes into different groups and I say, okay, this group is the US, this group is Canada, this group is Japan, etc. Then I tell the students they have a few minutes to communicate as a country. How are they going to respond to this conflict? I ask them to answer a few questions. Number 1, will you help your ally? If you will, answer how you are going to help them. Will you just send them some food, send them some supplies, maybe send them some money? Will you send them some equipment, or will you send them soldiers? How are you going to help your ally? If you decide not to help your ally, why? You really need to weigh the pros and cons of helping or not helping. If you don't help your ally, what if something happens to you in the future and you don't have an ally to help you out? And I also ask them, number 3, to answer what they would want in exchange for their help. Maybe they don't want anything. They're just going to help their ally for free. Maybe they want some financial compensation. Maybe they want some land, etc. A really fun way to make this come alive is to pass out little flags to each group. I don't have mine here today, they're at the office, but I just went online and bought some cheap little flags, and that's actually how I chose the country. It was just a set of flags, and so I said, okay, all right, we're gonna do Japan and Canada and France. And so as you tell each group which country they are, give them a flag. Not only does this make it more interactive, but it's going to be really helpful for the next activity. Give students a few minutes to communicate as their country. How are they going to respond? What are they going to do to help if they do decide to help? If they don't decide to help, why did they decide not to help? And then what compensation do they want to help? Once the discussion starts to wind down, I tell them that they must now choose one ambassador from each country. Ambassador is one of our vocabulary words. Their ambassador will go to the UN, also a vocabulary word, and they will have a meeting about a peace treaty. More vocabulary words. I'll give them a few minutes to decide, and once they've chosen their ambassador will grab their flag and come to the front of the room where the UN is. Now, if your classes are a little bit lower level, or maybe they're not used to speaking in public in front of their group, your ambassador might need a minute or 2 to prepare what they're going to say and prepare their statements. Their classmates, their countrymen, can help them with this as well. Then it's time for our peace treaty meeting at the UN. Then have each ambassador come to the front of the room. When they're at the front of the room, they can start their peace agreement. Now, I act as a moderator and I help the students discuss. I'm basically a facilitator because I find that when students just go to the front of the room, they're not really sure how to communicate with each other. They're not sure who should speak first. So often I will have the UK speak first, and the UK can talk to its allies. And I will tell the students that. I'll say, okay, the UK, you can now begin. Why don't you talk to the US and to Japan and communicate why you need them to join your fight? Then the US and Japan can respond, and that's when the discussion can really begin. Have the students discuss, have the students negotiate. Say things like, okay, the US has not agreed to help you. Is there anything you can do to change their mind? Maybe you can negotiate a little bit more. Japan has agreed to help you. You can also add a little bit of conflict as well, because the countries that happened to be in that set happened to be kind of close to each other. For example, if the US joins, perhaps Canada and the US will now be fighting. Their borders are quite close. If Russia joins, Russia and Japan are fairly nearby each other. What about their dynamics? And you can facilitate the discussion amongst all of the 6 countries until you come to a final decision. Will you have peace, or will the fighting continue? Maybe a peace treaty is possible, maybe not. This is a really great chance for students to practice their critical thinking, but this lesson lends itself to so much discussion. I usually have 90-minute classes, and this easily takes up the 90-minute class time because you're having students first discuss as a country, you're having the one ambassador get ready, and then you're having the entire discussion. If you are a good facilitator and you make sure that the summaries are happening and the questions are continuing to be asked, then it can really go for quite a long time, which is great because students have more opportunities to practice their English. For your homework, here are a few ideas. Now, I said when I opened up my textbook and I saw War and Peace, I was shocked. One of the focuses that they had in the textbook was talking about current events, news, government policies, things like that. So you could have students research a news event and write a summary about it, or prepare a short presentation or a short speech about a current news event. It could be about war, it could not, it could just be something about the current news. Another thing you could do is have students go back to that pros and cons list that they wrote at the beginning of the lesson, choose one of them and really expound upon it. Maybe do a little bit more research, learn a little bit more about it. You know, what technological advancements have we made as a direct result of wars or conflicts? How is the environment impacted? What pollution is caused from war? You could also have students research or write about a specific person who is quite famous for their works for peace. Someone like Gandhi. You could have them write a little bit about that person. You could ask them to find their own person, maybe someone who is famous in their own country, or you could give them one person that they all write about. You could ask students to answer the question, do you think we ever will have peace? In our world, that is, that's the dream, right? Every Miss America pageant just says, world peace. Do you think that would ever actually be possible? And students get to share their opinion. Tag teaming off of that, I really love to use songs in lessons and in homework. So you could have students listen to a song that's all about peace, have them analyze the lyrics, learn vocabulary words from the lyrics. Maybe a song like Imagine. I know that took on a different meaning in 2020, if you know, you know. You could have students analyze a song like Imagine. To be honest, a lot of the vocabulary in that song by John Lennon is quite simple. So you could have students analyze the lyrics and share their thoughts about it, learn vocabulary from it. Like I said, I never could have imagined that this would be such a popular lesson, but my goodness, students really enjoy having so much time for discussion. And I also think they really enjoy having something that progresses and gets more and more complex as it moves along. At first they just talk as their own country, and then they're all meeting together to have this meeting at the UN. Students get so into it. They get so passionate about sharing their ideas, and it's always a really, really engaging lesson. Hopefully some of these ideas will be useful for your classes. You can always check out the website atlasteaching.com for more tips and ideas. You can also check back here for weekly videos. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. Please like and subscribe. The only thing that does is it just tells YouTube that you enjoyed this video, and maybe some other teachers will get some value from it too. Okay, that's all for today. I will see you next time.